The supreme species dominated the stars. Then humans arrived. Part 1. The throne of stars. The Dralith had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They stood 3 meters tall, with silver skin that shone like polished metal. Their eyes burned with golden light, and their minds could process information faster than any computer. They had conquered every species they had ever met. Some they made into servants. Others they simply destroyed. The Dralith believed they were perfect. They believed they were the final step in evolution. And for 12,000 years, nothing had proven them wrong. High Sovereign Maldois sat upon his throne on Velthor Prime, the capital world of the Dralith Dominion. The throne room stretched for half a kilometer, filled with statues of his ancestors. Each one had been a conqueror. Each one had expanded the empire. Maldois had ruled for 300 years, longer than any human civilization had ever existed. He was old, powerful, and absolutely certain of his own greatness. A messenger approached the throne and knelt. His silver head touched the floor. "Speak," Maldois commanded. "High Sovereign, we have received reports from the Outer Rim. Our patrol fleet has encountered a new species." Maldois felt a flicker of interest. New species were rare. Most had been found and classified centuries ago. "What do we know of them?" "They call themselves humans, High Sovereign. They come from a small planet called Earth, in a system with only one star. They have been spacefaring for less than 200 years. 200 years? Maldois almost laughed. The Dralith had been building ships when humans were still living in caves. "What are they like?" "Small, High Sovereign. Barely 2 meters at their tallest. Soft bodies. No natural weapons. They live for less than a century. Their ships are slow and their weapons are primitive." Maldois waved his hand in dismissal. "They sound like insects. Why do you bring this to me?" "Because, High Sovereign, they have sent a diplomatic envoy. They wish to speak with us." For a long moment, Maldois said nothing. Then he began to laugh. The sound echoed through the throne room, cold and cruel. "Let them come. It will be amusing to see what these insects want." 3 days later, the human ship arrived at Velthor Prime. It was small, barely the size of a Dralith shuttle. The design was ugly and practical, without any of the elegant curves that marked Dralith engineering. Fleet Admiral Vorath watched it approach with contempt in his golden eyes. "Shall I destroy it, High Sovereign?" he asked through the communication link. "No," Maldois replied. "Let them land. I want to see these humans for myself." The ship landed in the great plaza before the palace. A crowd of Dralith gathered to watch, curious about the strange visitors. The door opened, and the humans stepped out. There were 5 of them. They wore simple gray uniforms, and they carried no visible weapons. Their leader was a woman with black hair and dark eyes. She looked up at the towering Dralith around her, and she did not look afraid. Her name was Una Park. She was 34 years old, and she had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. She was Earth's best diplomat, chosen for this mission because she never lost her calm, never showed fear, and never gave up. The Dralith guards led the humans through the palace. Una kept her head high, though her heart was beating fast. The Dralith were even more impressive in person than in the reports. They moved like predators, graceful and dangerous. Everything about them screamed power, but Una had seen the reports. She knew the Dralith had conquered hundreds of species. She knew they saw other beings as nothing more than animals, and she knew that showing weakness would be fatal. They entered the throne room, and Una saw Maldois for the first time. He sat on his throne like a god, looking down at her with amused contempt. She felt like an ant standing before a giant, but she did not kneel. She stood straight and met his golden eyes. "I am Una Park," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I speak for the people of Earth. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade. Maldoy studied her for a long moment. She was so small, so fragile. He could crush her with one hand. And yet she stood before him without trembling. "You are brave, little creature," he said. "Or perhaps simply foolish. Do you know who we are?" "You are the Dralith Dominion," Una replied. "You have ruled this region of space for thousands of years. We respect your power and your achievements." "Respect?" Maldois leaned forward. "You should fear us, human. Every species that has ever stood against us has been destroyed. We do not wish to stand against you. We wish to stand beside you. As partners. As equals." Silence filled the throne room. Then Maldois began to laugh again, and all the Dralith joined him. The sound was deafening. "Equals?" Maldois said when the laughter died. "Look at yourself, human. You are small. You are weak. You live for less than 100 years. Your technology is primitive. Your species is nothing. You could never be our equals." Una did not flinch. "We may be small, but we are determined. We may live short lives, but we make every moment count. We may have primitive technology, but we learn quickly. Do not judge us by what we are today. Judge us by what we might become." Maldois stared at her. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been curiosity, or perhaps concern. Then it was gone. "Go home, little human," he said, waving his hand in dismissal. "Go back to your small planet and your short lives. The Dralith have no interest in insects. You are not worth conquering. You are not worth remembering. In 1,000 years, your species will be dust, and we will still be here." Una wanted to argue. She wanted to show him that he was wrong. But she knew this was not the time. She bowed her head slightly, just enough to show respect without showing submission. "Thank you for receiving us, High Sovereign. Perhaps one day you will see us differently." She turned and walked out of the throne room, her team following behind her. The Dralith watched them go, already forgetting them. On the flight back to Earth, Una sat alone in her cabin and wrote her report. She described everything she had seen, everything she had learned. At the end, she added a personal note. "The Dralith are powerful, but they are blind. They cannot see past their own pride. They believe they are the end of history, the final word in evolution. But they are wrong. They have stopped growing, stopped changing. They have become frozen in their own greatness. We are still growing. We are still changing. And one day, we will show them what humanity can become." She sent the report and looked out at the stars. The Dralith had dismissed humanity as worthless. They had called them insects. They had laughed at the very idea of treating them as equals. Una smiled. They would learn. 3 months later, Dralith scouts reported something disturbing. The humans had begun trading with species that belonged to the Dominion. They were offering technology, medicine, and something the Dralith had never thought to offer. High Sovereign. Maldois received the report and felt the first stirring of anger. These insects were becoming a problem. Perhaps it was time to teach them their place. The supreme species dominated the stars. Then humans arrived. Part 2. The price of arrogance. Fleet Admiral Varath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and smiled. Behind him, 60 warships moved in perfect formation. Each one was a masterpiece of Dralith engineering, armed with weapons that could crack a planet in half. He was leading this fleet to a small mining colony called Kethrus 4, where humans had dared to establish a trading post. The High Sovereign had given him simple orders. Destroy the human ships. Burn their colony. Make an example that would echo across the galaxy. Varath expected the mission to take less than a day. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, "we are detecting human ships in orbit around Kethrus 4. "How many?" 12, Admiral." Varath laughed. 12 ships against 60. The humans were even more foolish than he had thought. Open a communication channel. I want to give them a chance to run. It will be more satisfying to hunt them down. The view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. He was young, with sharp eyes and a calm expression. He wore a simple military uniform with a captain's insignia. I am Captain Tae-Hyun Kang of the Earth Defense Force, the human said. You are entering protected space. Turn back now. Varth could not believe what he was hearing. Protected space? This system belongs to the Dralith Dominion, human. You are the invaders here. The people of Kethrus 4 asked for our protection. We gave it. We will not abandon them. Then you will die with them. Vorath cut the communication and turned to his officers. All ships, attack formation. Destroy the human fleet. The Dralith ships surged forward, their weapons charging. Vorath expected the humans to scatter and run. Instead, they held their position. They were either very brave or very stupid. The first volley of Dralith weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human ships. Vorath waited for the explosions, waited for the humans to die. But the human ships moved. They moved faster than anything Vorath had ever seen. They dodged and weaved through the barrage, and not a single shot hit them. What is happening? Vorath demanded. Admiral, the human ships are using some kind of advanced maneuvering system. They are predicting our firing patterns. Vorath felt a chill run down his spine. That should not be possible. Dralith targeting systems were the best in the galaxy. The human ships returned fire. Their weapons were weaker than Dralith weapons, but their aim was perfect. They targeted engines, weapon systems, communication arrays. They were not trying to destroy the Dralith ships. They were trying to disable them. They are toying with us, Vorath realized with horror. All ships, break formation. Engage at will. The battle dissolved into chaos. The Dralith ships, used to fighting in perfect formation against inferior enemies, struggled to adapt. The humans fought like nothing they had ever seen. They used asteroids for cover. They feinted and retreated, drawing the Dralith into traps. They communicated constantly, coordinating their attacks with frightening precision. Captain Tae-Hyun Kang flew his ship, the Defiant Star, through the heart of the Dralith fleet. His crew worked around him in perfect harmony, each one knowing exactly what to do without being told. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. 2 destroyers on our tail, his sensor officer reported. Lead them toward Asteroid Field 7, Tae-Hyun ordered. Let them think they have us. The Defiant Star dove into the asteroid field, the Dralith destroyers following close behind. The asteroids were massive, some the size of small moons. The Dralith ships were larger and less agile. They struggled to navigate the field. Now, Tae-Hyun said. The Defiant Star spun around and opened fire. At the same moment, 2 other human ships appeared from behind the asteroids, catching the Dralith destroyers in a crossfire. The destroyers exploded in twin balls of fire. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships sacrificed themselves to protect civilian transports fleeing the colony. Pilots rammed their damaged vessels into Dralith weapons arrays, destroying themselves to save their comrades. They fought with a ferocity that the Dralith had never encountered. On the Eternal Dominion, Vorath watched in disbelief as his fleet crumbled. He had lost 10 ships, then 20, then 30. His communications officer reported that morale was collapsing. Dralith captains were begging to retreat. We cannot retreat, Vorath snarled. We are the Dralith. We do not lose. But they were losing. The humans were outthinking them at every turn. They were unpredictable, creative, and absolutely fearless. In the end, Vorath had no choice. He ordered a full retreat. The surviving Dralith ships fled. leaving behind the burning wreckage of 31 vessels, 31 ships. In 12,000 years of conquest, the Dralith had never lost more than 3 ships in any battle. Vorath had lost 31 to a species that they had dismissed as insects. Captain Tehan Kang watched the Dralith retreat. He felt no joy, only exhaustion and grief. Of his 12 ships, only 4 remained. The rest were debris, their crews gone. He had known many of those crews personally. He had trained with them, eaten with them, laughed with them. Now they were dead, but they had won. They had protected Kethros 4. They had shown the galaxy that the Dralith could be beaten. The victory celebrations on Kethros 4 were mixed with mourning. The colonists cheered for their saviors, but the surviving crews stood silent, remembering their fallen friends. Tehan gave a short speech, his voice steady but his eyes full of pain. Today we lost brothers and sisters. They gave their lives so that others might live. We will never forget them. We will carry their memory with us, and we will make sure their sacrifice was not in vain. Admiral Vorath returned to Velthor Prime in disgrace. He brought with him the few human prisoners his forces had captured during the battle. He expected the High Sovereign to be angry. He did not expect what happened next. Malloys was beyond angry. He was terrified, though he would never admit it. For the first time in his long life, he had seen something he did not understand. These humans should have been nothing. They should have been crushed in minutes. Instead, they had humiliated the greatest military force in the galaxy. Execute the prisoners, he ordered. Make it slow. Make it painful. Record everything and broadcast it across the galaxy. Let every species see what happens to those who defy us. Vorath obeyed. The human prisoners were tortured and killed, their deaths shown to billions of viewers. Malloys expected this to break the human spirit. He expected them to surrender, to beg for mercy. He was wrong. When the broadcast reached Earth, there was no despair. There was no surrender. There was rage. The names of the fallen became legends overnight. Songs were written about them. Children memorized their stories. Recruitment centers overflowed with volunteers, all of them wanting to avenge their heroes. Tehan Kang watched the broadcasts with his surviving crew. His hands shook with anger, but his voice was calm when he spoke. They think they can break us with cruelty. They do not understand. Every act of cruelty makes us stronger. Every fallen hero makes us more determined. We will not stop until the galaxy is free. On Velthor Prime, Malloys received reports of human activity. They were building more ships. They were training more soldiers. They were reaching out to other species, forming alliances. The scholar Fail requested an audience with the High Sovereign. He was young for a Dralith, barely a century old, but his mind was sharp. High Sovereign, he said, I have been studying the humans. I believe we have made a terrible mistake. A mistake? Malloys' voice was dangerous. Yes, we thought killing their soldiers would frighten them. Instead, it has united them. Humans do not fight like other species. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for ideas, for honor, for each other. And now they fight for revenge. Then we will crush them completely, Malloy said. We will burn their worlds and salt their fields. We will erase them from history. Ithael shook his head sadly. I fear that will only make things worse. You cannot kill an idea, High Sovereign. And humanity itself has become an idea. Malloys dismissed him with a wave. He did not understand. He would. The supreme species dominated the stars. Then, humans arrived. Part 4. Fire across the stars. The galaxy was burning. Across 1,000 light years, the war between the Coalition and the Dralith Dominion raged. Ships clashed in the darkness between stars. Planets changed hands. Millions died on both sides. Admiral Sungho Beek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unity, watching the battle unfold on his tactical display. The Coalition fleet was engaging a Dralith armada near the fortress. World of Catherine Prime. It was one of the most heavily defended positions in the Dominion. Enemy. Reinforcements incoming, his sensor officer reported. 30 ships, bearing 047. Captain Moon, take your strike force and intercept them. Buy us time. G1 Moon's voice crackled through the communication channel. Understood, Admiral. We will hold them. Sungho watched her ships peel away from the main fleet. G1 was one of his best officers. She had fought in a dozen battles, always emerging victorious. But this time, the odds were not in her favor. Be careful, he said quietly, though he knew she could not hear him. The battle for Catherine Prime lasted 12 hours. It was brutal, bloody, and costly. But in the end, the Coalition won. The Dralith defenders surrendered, their fortress in ruins. Their fleet destroyed. It was the Coalition's 20th major victory. The Dominion was crumbling in the prisoner-holding area. Coalition soldiers treated the captured Dralith with surprising kindness. They provided medical care, food, and clean water. They spoke to their prisoners with respect. A young Dralith captain named Vithris could not understand it. He had been taught that enemies were to be destroyed, not cared for. When a human medic bandaged his wounds, he finally asked a question that had been burning in his mind. Why? Why do you not kill us? We would kill you. Who we kill you? The medic, a woman named Yoonji Han, looked at him with sad eyes. Because killing you would not end the war. It would only make it worse. She finished wrapping his arm and stepped back. We are not fighting to destroy you. We are fighting to free the galaxy. And when this war is over, we hope that even you can be part of that freedom. Vithris stared at her in confusion. This was not how war was supposed to work. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers shared their rations with starving prisoners. Coalition medics treated Dralith wounded alongside their own. Surrender terms were fair, even generous. The Dralith did not know how to respond. For 12,000 years, they had ruled through fear. They had never encountered an enemy who fought with compassion. The scholar, Ithel, watched all of this from Velther Prime. He had access to military reports, prisoner interviews, and captured communications. He saw the pattern that his fellow Dralith could not see. The humans were not just winning battles. They were winning hearts. One night, Ithel made a decision. He gathered his research, packed a small bag, and made his way to the spaceport. He used his credentials to commandeer a small shuttle. Where are you going? The guard asked. Field research, Ithel replied. It was not entirely a lie. He flew to the front lines. When Coalition ships detected him, he did not run. He broadcast a surrender signal and waited. Admiral Beek personally received him aboard the Unity. The Dralith scholar stood before the human admiral, his silver skin catching the light of the bridge. I wish to defect, Ithel said. I wish to help you end this war. Sungho studied him carefully. Why should we trust you? Because I have spent years studying your species. I understand what you are fighting for, and I believe you are right. Ithel paused. The Dominion has ruled for too long. We have become stagnant, cruel, blind to our own weakness. You represent something new, something better. I wish to be part of that. Sungho considered his words. Then he extended his hand. Welcome to the Coalition. Ithel provided intelligence that changed the course of the war. He revealed the locations of hidden bases, the weaknesses in Dralith defenses, and the political divisions within the Dominion's leadership. Most importantly, he confirmed what the Coalition had suspected. High Sovereign Malthois was planning something terrible. Deep beneath the surface of Velther Prime, In chambers that had not been opened for millennia, ancient machines were awakening. They were called the Void Engines, weapons of unimaginable power created by the Drolith's ancestors. Each one could destabilize the core of a star, causing it to explode and destroy everything in its system. Maldoy's planned to use them against humanity. He would burn Earth, burn every human colony, burn every world that had joined the coalition. If he could not rule the galaxy, he would destroy it. "He has gone mad," Ithael said, his voice heavy with grief. He would rather see the galaxy in ashes than admit defeat. Sung-Ho felt cold fear settle in his stomach. How long until the Void Engines are ready? Days, perhaps less. The Admiral turned to his officers. "We need to attack Velthor Prime immediately. Everything we have." G1 shook her head. "Our fleet is scattered. It will take weeks to assemble enough forces. Then we go with what we have." Sung-Ho's voice was firm. "We do not have a choice." On Velthor Prime, Hana Shin sat in her cell. She had been a prisoner for months. The Dralith had tried to break her, but she had told them nothing. Her body was weak, her spirit was strong. A guard brought her food, as he did every day. But this time, he slipped something into her hand along with the tray. A small communication device. Hannah looked up at him in surprise. The guard was young, his silver skin dull with exhaustion. He met her eyes for just a moment. "Some of us are listening," he whispered. "Some of us want this to end." After he left, Hana activated the device. It took her an hour to figure out how to send a signal without being detected. But she managed it. She sent a single message to the Coalition fleet. "He's going to burn everything. The Void Engines are real. You must hurry." Admiral Beak received the message as his fleet was making final preparations for the assault on Velthor Prime. He read it 3 times, his face growing paler with each reading. "All ships," he ordered. "Maximum speed. We are out of time." Captain Tanghyan Kang, now commanding a Special Forces unit, requested permission to lead a ground assault. "If the Void Engines are underground, we need boots on the ground. Let me take my team in." Sung-Ho hesitated. The mission would be incredibly dangerous. But Taehan was the best ground commander they had. "Approved. Your objective is to reach the Void Engines and disable them." "And Taehan?" The Admiral paused. "Dr. Shin is a prisoner somewhere in that palace. If you can find her, bring her home." Taehan nodded grimly. "I will." The Coalition fleet jumped to Velthor Prime. They arrived to find the largest Drolith armada ever assembled waiting for them. The battle began immediately, the largest and most desperate battle of the war. Taihan's assault shuttle dove through the chaos, dodging fire from both sides. His team consisted of 50 soldiers, the best humanity had to offer. They knew the odds. They knew most of them would not survive. They went anyway. The shuttle crashed through the palace, shields, and landed in the Great Plaza. Taehan led his team out into a storm of weapons fire. They fought their way through the corridors, room by room, level by level, descending toward the heart of the palace. They found Hana in a cell deep underground. She was weak, barely able to stand, but her eyes were bright with fierce joy. "You came," she whispered. "We always come," Taehan replied. He lifted her in his arms. "Now let's finish this." The team pressed on, deeper into the palace, toward the Void Engines, toward the end of the war. The Supreme Species dominated the stars. Then humans arrived. Part 3. The Gathering Storm 5. Years had passed since the Battle of Kethros 4. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Dralith dominions still ruled. The cracks had appeared in their perfect empire. Whispers of rebellion spread from world to world. And at the center of it all were the humans. Dr. Hana Shin crouched in the darkness of an underground cave on the planet Veltho 7. Around her sat dozens of Velthi. a species the Dralith had enslaved for centuries. The Velthi were small, barely reaching Hana's shoulder, with large eyes adapted to the darkness of their mining tunnels. Their bodies were covered with rough gray skin, and their hands were built for digging. The Dralith considered them animals, useful for manual labor, but nothing more. Hana saw something different. She saw intelligence. She saw courage. She saw people waiting to be free. "The Dralith tell you that you are nothing," she said, her voice soft but clear. "They tell you that you were born to serve. They tell you the resistance is impossible." She paused, looking into their large, frightened eyes. "They are lying." An old Velthi named Morrow spoke up. "The Dralith are powerful. They have weapons. They have ships. We have nothing." "You have each other," Hana replied. "You have courage. You have hope. And you have us." She reached out and took Morrow's rough hand in her own. "Humanity knows what it is like to be underestimated. We know what it is like to be told we are worthless. But we also know that every chain can be broken. Every tyrant can fall. You just need to believe it is possible." The Velthi exchanged glances. For the first time in generations, something other than fear flickered in their eyes. Hope. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Sungho Beek sat in a hidden command center on a moon with no name. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of ships, the status of supply lines, and the faces of allies from a dozen different species. The Morvani were small, fast, and brilliant at hiding. They had developed cloaking technology that could fool even Dralith sensors. The Gelthari were massive, peaceful beings who had been forced to build weapons for the Dominion. Now they built weapons for the Coalition instead. The Kasori controlled vast shipyards, hidden in asteroid fields that the Dralith had never bothered to map. Sungho had spent 5 years building this alliance. It had been slow, dangerous work. The Dralith had spies everywhere. Any mistake could mean death for thousands. But now, finally, they were ready. "The uprisings will begin in 3 weeks, Sungho said, his voice calm and confident. 40 worlds. Simultaneous attacks on Dralith military installations, communication hubs, and supply depots. By the time they understand what is happening, we will have cut their empire in half." Captain G1 Moon, his second-in-command, studied the battle plans. She was young, brilliant, and absolutely fearless. She had lost her family in a Dralith attack, and she had dedicated her life to making them pay. "What about the civilian populations?" she asked. "The Dralith will retaliate. We have evacuation plans for every world. The moment we attack, our ships will begin moving non-combatants to safe zones." Sungho met her eyes. "We will not become what we are fighting. We will protect the innocent, even if it costs us." G1 nodded slowly. This was what made the Coalition different. This was what made humanity different. They did not fight just to win. They fought to build something better. On Velthar Prime, the scholar Thale continued his research. He had collected every piece of information about humans that he could find. He had studied their history, their culture, their art, their wars. The more he learned, the more fascinated he became. Humans were not like any species the Dralith had ever encountered. They were contradictions walking on 2 legs. They could create beautiful art and terrible weapons. They could show incredible kindness and unspeakable cruelty. They could sacrifice themselves for strangers, then turn around and destroy each other over differences in belief. But one thing stood out above all else. Humans never gave up. No matter how badly they were beaten, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed, they kept fighting. They had a word for it in their language. Resilience. HAEL brought his findings to the High Sovereign, hoping to make him understand the danger. "These humans are not like the other species we have conquered," he explained. They cannot be intimidated. They cannot be broken. Every time we hurt them, they become stronger. Every martyr we create becomes a rallying point for their cause. Maldois listened with growing impatience. You speak as if they are some kind of supernatural force. They are flesh and blood, Ithael. They can be killed. Yes, they can be killed. But their ideas cannot. And their ideas are spreading. Ithael hesitated, then continued. I have received reports that some of our subject species are beginning to ask questions. They want to know why the humans fight so hard. They want to know what freedom feels like. Maldois's eyes flashed with anger. Then we will remind them. Double the patrols. Triple the punishments. Anyone who speaks of rebellion will be executed. Ithael bowed and left, knowing that his warnings had failed. The High Sovereign could not see the truth. He was too proud, too certain of his own power. He believed that force could solve any problem. He was about to learn otherwise. Dr. Hana Shin had been traveling between worlds for months, spreading her message of hope. She moved quietly, always one step ahead of Dralith patrols. She had become a legend among the oppressed species, a symbol of the freedom that was coming. The legends are hard to hide. She was on a supply run when the Dralith found her. A patrol ship appeared out of nowhere, weapons charged. Hana's small transport had no chance. Surrender or be destroyed, the Dralith commander ordered. Hana looked at her crew. They were young, brave, and ready to fight. But she knew that fighting would mean death. And dead, she could not help anyone. We surrender, she said quietly. The Dralith brought her to Velther Prime in chains. She was paraded through the streets as a trophy, proof that the human resistance could be defeated. Crowds of Dralith gathered to stare at her, some curious, others contemptuous. Hana kept her head high. She met their golden eyes without flinching. She was afraid, but she would not show it. They brought her before Maldois himself. The High Sovereign looked down at her from his throne, and for the first time, he seemed truly interested in a human. So, you are the one who has been poisoning my subjects with ideas of freedom, he said. You are smaller than I expected. Good things come in small packages, Hana replied. Maldois's eyes narrowed. You will tell me everything. The location of your bases, the names of your allies, the plans of your fleet, and if I refuse, then you will suffer. Maldois leaned forward. I have methods that can break any mind. I have broken thousands before you. No one resists for long. Hana smiled. It was a calm, peaceful smile, completely at odds with her situation. You still do not understand us, do you? You think pain will make me talk. You think fear will make me betray my friends. But we are human. We have faced extinction a dozen times. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. Pain is nothing new to us. Fear is nothing new. She took a deep breath. Do your worst. I will tell you nothing. Maldois stared at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes. It might have been anger. It might have been doubt. We will see, he said at last. Take her away. As the guards dragged her from the throne room, Hana managed to catch the eye of a young Dralith standing in the shadows. He was watching her with an expression she had never seen on a Dralith face before. Understanding. 3 weeks later, Sunho gave the order. Across 40 worlds, the coalition struck. Communications arrays exploded. Supply depots burned. Dralith military bases found themselves under attack from species they had ruled for centuries. And on Velther Prime, the lights went out. The Dominion's communication network went dark. The war had begun. The supreme species dominated the stars. Then humans arrived. Part 5. What makes us human? The corridor was dark and filled with smoke. Captain Taehyun Kang moved forward, his weapon raised, his senses alert. Behind him, the remains of his team followed. They had started with 50 soldiers. Now only 12 remained. Dr. Hana Shin walked with them, supported by a young soldier named Min-Soo Cho. She was weak from months of imprisonment, but she refused to be left behind. This was her fight too. "The void engine control chamber is ahead," she said, checking a map she had memorized during her captivity. "But there will be guards." "Let there be guards," Taehyun replied. "We did not come this far to stop now." They reached a massive door, sealed with technology older than human civilization. Hana studied the lock for a moment, then began working. Her fingers moved quickly, guided by knowledge she had gained from friendly Dralith, who had whispered secrets during her imprisonment. The door opened. Beyond was a chamber of impossible size. It stretched down into darkness, and at its center stood a machine that hurt to look at. It was the void engine, a weapon that could destroy stars. Energy pulsed through it in sickening waves, building toward activation. And standing before it, his hand on the control panel, was High Sovereign Maldois. He turned as they entered. His golden eyes were wild, filled with madness and despair. He no longer looked like a god. He looked like a creature that had lost everything. "You are too late," he said. "In moments, the engine will fire. Earth will burn. Every human colony will burn. Every world that stood against us will burn." Taehyun raised his weapon, but Maldois laughed. "Kill me if you wish. The engine is already activated. Nothing can stop it now." Hana stepped forward, shaking off Min-Soo's supporting arm. She walked toward Maldois, her steps slow but steady. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you destroy everything? Even your own people?" Maldois stared at her with confusion and rage. "Because I cannot lose. The Dralith cannot lose. We are the supreme species. We are the masters of the galaxy. If we cannot rule, then the galaxy does not deserve to exist." "That is not strength," Hana said softly. "That is fear. You are afraid of a universe where you are not in control. You are afraid of being ordinary. Silence." Maldois roared. "We came from a small planet," Hana continued, ignoring him. "We lived short lives. We had no natural weapons, no special abilities. By every measure, we should have been nothing. But we survived. We grew. We reached for the stars." She was close to him now, close enough to touch. "Do you know why?" Maldois did not answer. He could not look away from her eyes. "Because we were never alone. We had each other. We loved each other. We sacrificed for each other." Hana's voice was gentle now, almost kind. "That is what you never understood. You built an empire on fear and domination. We built a coalition on hope and compassion. Fear is strong, but hope is stronger. Domination is powerful, but love is more powerful." Behind Maldois, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Ithael. He had made his own way through the palace, using secret passages known only to scholars. He had brought with him a dozen Dralith guards who were tired of the madness, tired of the war, tired of serving a leader who would destroy everything rather than change. "High Sovereign," Ithael said, "it is over. Your guards have surrendered. Your fleet is being destroyed. You are alone." Maldois looked from Hana to Ithael to the guards who had betrayed him. For the first time in his 300 years, he felt something he did not recognize: defeat. "You cannot stop the engine," he said, his voice now hollow. "The activation sequence has begun. In minutes, the star at the heart of your pathetic Earth system will explode." Taehyun moved to the control panel, studying it desperately. But the controls were in an ancient Dralith dialect, impossible to read. Hana turned back to Maldois. She did something that no one expected. She extended her hand. "Help us," she said. Malloy stared at her hand as if it were a venomous snake. "What?" "Help us stop the engine. You are the High Sovereign. You can deactivate it. Why would I do that? You have destroyed everything I built. You have humiliated me before the galaxy, because destruction is not the answer." Hana kept her hand extended. "Because somewhere inside you, there is still something good. You did not always rule through cruelty. Your ancestors built wonders, not just weapons. They explored, they created, they dreamed." She paused. "You can still choose a different path." Malvois laughed bitterly. "A different path? I am 300 years old. I have never known anything but power. What would I be without it?" Hana smiled softly. "You would be free." The chamber was silent except for the hum of the void engine, growing louder by the second. Malloy looked at Hana's hand. He looked at Ithael, who was watching him with something like hope. He looked at the human soldiers, who had fought through his palace, who had sacrificed everything to save a galaxy that was not even theirs. For his entire life, he had believed that power came from conquest, that greatness came from domination, that the strong must rule and the weak must serve. But looking at these humans, these small, fragile, short-lived creatures, he saw a different kind of strength. They were not here to conquer. They were here to save. They would die for people they had never met. They would offer mercy to an enemy who had tried to destroy them. That was not weakness. That was something Malloy had never understood, something he had never felt. Until now, he took Hana's hand. Slowly, he turned to the control panel. His fingers moved across the ancient symbols, entering codes that only the High Sovereign knew. The hum of the void engine began to fade. The pulsing energy dimmed dot, and then silence. The engine was deactivated. Teheim let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Around him, his soldiers sagged with relief. Minsu actually sat down on the floor, too exhausted to stand any longer. Hana kept holding Malloy's hand. "Thank you." Malloy did not reply. He was staring at the deactivated engine, at the weapon that would have destroyed everything. He had come so close to ending the galaxy, and he had stopped himself. He did not understand why, but perhaps, in time, he would. The war ended that day. With the void engines deactivated and Malloy's surrender broadcast across the Dominion, the remaining Dralith forces laid down their arms. It took months to negotiate peace treaties, to rebuild shattered worlds, to heal the wounds of a galaxy at war. But healing began. 10 years later, the Galactic Assembly met for the first time on Velthor Prime. Representatives from 100 species gathered in what had once been the throne room of the Dralith Dominion. The statues of conquering ancestors had been replaced by monuments to peace. Admiral Sunhobeek, now the human ambassador, addressed the assembly. His hair was gray, his face lined with years of struggle and triumph, but his voice was strong. "We came to this galaxy as strangers. You called us insects. You called us primitives. You said we were not worth remembering." He smiled. "But we remembered ourselves. We remembered that every being deserves dignity, that every voice deserves to be heard, that every hand, no matter how small, can help build something great." He looked around the chamber at the faces of allies who had once been enemies. "Today we begin a new chapter, not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners. Not as masters and servants, but as equals. The galaxy is vast, and there is room enough for all of us." The assembly applauded. Among the crowd, Hana Shin sat beside Ithael, who had become the Dralith ambassador to the coalition. She caught his eye and smiled. In a quiet corner of the chamber, Malvois watched the proceedings. He was no longer the High Sovereign. He had given up his title, his power, everything he had once valued. Now he was simply a teacher, sharing his knowledge of Dralith history with young students who would grow up in a different galaxy. A human child approached him, curious about the tall silver being. "Were you really the ruler of everything?" she asked. Malloys looked down at her with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "I was," he said. "But I learned something from your people." "What?" "That ruling is not the same as leading. That power is not the same as strength. And that the smallest hand can change the universe." The child smiled and ran off to join her friends. Malloys watched her go. And for the first time in 300 years, he felt something warm in his chest. Hope outside the assembly hall. The stars shone brightly. Once they had been symbols of conquest. Now they were invitations, waiting to be explored by a galaxy finally. United in peace, humanity had arrived among the stars, and they had changed everything.